What's going on, YouTube? Today, Real Patriots Fishing here with Ryan Holder from Ryan Holder Outdoors. He's going to be starting a YouTube channel. He kind of has one, so he's got some videos up. Today, we're going to be talking about some of these different profile baits and kind of how to throw them. We both have different kind of fishing techniques, if you will. He's more of a power fisherman. I'm more of a finesse fisherman. Although most of these baits you see here are kind of power fishing techniques, there are a couple small finesse ones and some ones that are not on here that we'll talk about. First of all, Ryan, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So, as I said before, Ryan fishes a little bit different. He can kind of tell you about how he fishes, where he fishes, and then I'll go into a little bit about how I fish.
Yeah, so I just got into the kayak fishing last year at fall time, and I've always fished all my life, mainly just crankbaits and top water, hard bait type stuff. And this year coming into it, 2025, I really wanted to change up some things. I've always really wanted to do the plastic thing, but never really had the patience to do it. So ran across Chad on social media, and we hooked up, and he kind of got me into some plastics and gave me some hints and techniques and things to try. And already this year I've caught fish on Wacky Rig, caught a 3 3/4 on Wacky at Chickahominy River, and that right there, I was hooked after that. And then Carolina Rig at Smith Mountain Lake, I caught, you can see that on my channel. And then what was that last week? The Zoom Speed Crawl.
Speed Crawl.
That I caught on
Texas Rig Speed Crawl.
Yeah, that was pretty fun. I was impressed with that one because that was, I don't even think that was one Chad told me about. That was one I ran across on my own and saw somebody else using it on YouTube, wanted to try it and caught a fish on it. So I was pretty stoked. It was a green pumpkin one. It's about the 3.5 inch one. And they were really biting Chad. They were biting small profile that day on that reservoir that we were on. And I said, well, shoot, I'm going to try that. And shoot, half the day later, I finally caught one on it. But yes, I've enjoyed it. I've got into the swim jig this year, and I was teasing Chad. Like, you got to get on the swim jig. You got to. I hadn't even caught a fish on a swim jig yet, and I was telling him he needed to do it. And shoot, he went out one evening, Friday evening, with our friend Ron, and he flat tore him up on a swim jig. He was like, I'm hooked.
Yeah, which is funny because in the last 10 years I really kind of got into bass fishing. I haven't thrown a lot of jigs, especially swim jigs, or trying different things. I basically have stuck to a couple of my key baits, which a lot of them you see here today. But Ryan kept telling me, hey, we got to get in this swim jig game. And so the whole part of bass fishing is you kind of have to listen to what the bass are telling you.
Yeah.
Which can be really hard. I got lucky the day that I picked up that swim jig and threw it and caught a bass on it right away, and then the rest of the day, that's basically the only thing they would hit. So
tell them also that different weight size. You lost that one, and you went to, and that was that only weight.
So going back to that day, basically, I was throwing it's a 6 cent swim jig. This is not it. This is an actual Mushroom Z, or Shrooms is what they call them. It's a Ned rig, mushroom head. I think they call it like a finesse Ned rig. So I was throwing a 6 cent swim jig, a quarter or a 3/16 ounce, and with a very, very small trailer on the back of it, a straight King Rage Ned bug is what they called it. It has a very small profile. I threw it up against a bank a couple times, didn't get a hit. Threw it up against some wood, was kind of fluttering it back and forth, and hooked into a nice 2.5, 3 pound fish. Which is on one of my other videos, and I think you hear me say swim jig really loud because I was surprised. What happened was I started catching fish on that jig, and then ended up losing it to either a bowfin or a gar or something, and I didn't have another one because, again, I just got into it, so I didn't have a lot of these in my stash, basically. So the next smallest thing I had, or what was small, was this Shrooms finesse Ned rig. Or I don't know what you really.
It's finesse. It's really small.
Yeah, it's a finesse Ned jig is kind of like what I would like to call it. I know there's an official name for it, but I picked this up. I put the same trailer on it and just waylaid them the rest of the day. So it was that profile that they wanted It was the way it fell that they wanted. But before I put this one on, I had put a 1/4 ounce one on and threw that for another hour and didn't get another bite. So going back to listening what the fish are telling you, they wanted it slow falling. They wanted a small profile. When I switched to the larger profile, I stopped catching fish. So that just goes to show you of how finicky bass are. So if you're out there and you're new to bass fishing and you're trying to figure out what to throw, basically what I can tell you is throw the kitchen sink out of them until you get a bite.
Yeah.
And when you get a bite, key in on how you threw it, where you threw it. Was it cloudy? Was it, what was the water clarity? All these different things that you have to take in consideration into bass fishing. And depending on where you bass fish, it may be as simple as throwing a Texas rig worm out there, no matter what it is, or throwing a crankbait out there, no matter what it is. The fish pressure matters. Tournaments. Have there been a lot of tournaments out there?
And that place we fished is very much pressure.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
It's a trolling motor lake only, a reservoir. But a couple weeks ago you said they had a 22 boat tournament.
40 boat tournament.
So I mean that's a pressure reservoir.
Yep. So the baits that I kind of got out here today, I'll just go through them really quick and tell you, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail. Obviously the swim jig, which we were just talking about. I have not caught a fish on this one yet, but I think...
Is that the 1/4 or 3/8? That one's got a big head.
This is a 1/4, but it's got a really big head profile.
Yeah. I like it.
And there's all kinds of different trailers you can put with them. Obviously, this is a Zoom... I think they call it a Zoom double mag or something. It's basically just a little thing with a tail. A double tail grub is basically
that's
what it is.
Yamamoto's name for it.
Yeah. Yamamoto makes the same one, but you'll pay about $14.
Yeah, I know.
Zoom, you'll pay probably about $7.
Yeah.
Spinnerbait, obviously, if you've watched a lot of my videos, you know that I'm a fan of the spinnerbait. Brian doesn't have confidence in it yet. He's going to get confidence this year when we get on him. There's a time and a place to throw that as well, but I throw it a lot. The crankbait, this is one of Ryan's favorites.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, he throws it a lot in the knot away.
Yeah.
I troll a lot with this. This color here, this chartreuse color, obviously it's a hot color. Just a regular, I think this is a KVD 1.5 square bill, so it dies between 3 and 5 feet. You can go to a smaller profile and try, if you're getting hits on this but not getting hookups, maybe neck down to a 1.0 and fish it a little bit shallower. But this is a great bait to throw all year. I mean,
absolutely.
I always have one tied on. Whether it's the wintertime, it's probably a red colored one. Summertime, it's this colored one. Dead of the summer, deep diving, it's going to be a shad colored one. Yeah. This is a bait that I absolutely hate and have tied on, but rarely throw it. This is a chatterbait. Basically, this kind of took over,
Bladed jig.
Yeah, bladed jig. You hear it called a couple different things. You can put a couple different trailers on it. You can put a crawl trailer on it, or this is just a regular swim bait one. This is like a Zoom 2.75, I think, is what I have. The same trailer I put on my spinnerbait is what I put on here. Because typically when I throw this, I'm going to be burning it pretty quick. I'm not going to be letting it sit on the bottom. I know some people will hop them off the bottom.
Fish it like a jig.
Yeah,
a lot of them do.
And if you're gonna fish it off the bottom, probably better to put more of a creature style bait on it, because that'll keep it from rolling left to right on you and keep it flat, which is gonna protect that hook. One of the reasons I don't like throwing this is because of the exposed hook, which is one of the reasons I didn't like throwing the swim jigs when I first did it. But now I'm seeing some of the versatility in some of these other baits that, maybe I'll pick this up a little bit more and throw it. People here on the Chickahominy and the James throw it to death. Swear by it. Usually they throw a little bit smaller one, but I mean, it's kind of a preference, and again, what the fish are biting. Before we go into some top water stuff, again, that little Ned jig, it's good for when those fish are kind of not wanting to bite the way you think they're going to, or if they're just being real finicky. Football jig, which is basically just a jig with a football looking style head. It's more rounded head. It's more for kind of hopping off the bottom. You can put a craw on it. Probably good for the knot away.
Yeah. Rocky bottom.
But again, rocky bottoms. Again, you have an exposed hook, so you kind of got to pay attention to what you're doing. And then this is just another, swim jig with a different style trailer. It's like a chunks trailer, basically. What is it? Zoom.
Yeah, Zoom makes it. I
Zoom
literally
makes
just bought
this
that
one.
today.
Yeah.
I like the legs on it versus the regular normal chunk. I was never really a fan of those. But like I said, I haven't thrown a jig
Yeah.
either. So
The other chunks is basically two craws,
Yeah.
two crawl feet, or crawl legs,
Yeah.
not feet. But if you follow Mike Iaconelli and you look at his Bitsy Bug, he throws that other chunks on there, and he throws it a lot in the James and the Potomac and catches a ton of fish.
yeah,
Black and blue is obviously a hot color here because of the darker water that we have.
yeah,
And so is green pumpkin and white. You see I have a lot of white stuff and a lot of black stuff, basically. All right, so switch it over to kind of top water. This is a scum frog. So there's about, I don't know, 5 or 6 different styles of top water baits that you can throw. You have a slow moving bait, which is a frog. You have a buzz bait, which is fast. Obviously, you're going to be pulling it across the water at the top of the water, kind of as fast as you can. It's more of a reaction bite. You can put a grub trailer on there. You can put a frog on there. They make a bunch of different profiles. They actually make some double bladed and triple bladed ones.
I don't even know
which
one.
I don't throw. I love throwing the buzz bait, but the problem I have with it is I will throw it so much it'll wear my shoulder out.
Yeah.
Because it's just nonstop. And a lot of guys will throw this just in straight open water, but I'll throw it on top of milfoil. I'll throw it behind the pads, in the pads. So obviously that's teamed up with some braid. The other style you have is basically a popper.
My favorite.
Yep, probably one of Ryan's favorites. This is a Berkeley Bullet Pop. It really doesn't matter the brand to me. The cheaper, probably the better, in my opinion. Smaller profile. I throw a white kind of at night or in the morning, and I'll switch over to a black. A lot of times here, for some reason, clear works really well. I don't know why, but clear seems to do very well here. I've got a couple videos on this one alone where I've gone out. I mean, you can see the hooks on this one are bent all that crap. Where I've gone out and caught a lot of fish on this. So, and, the color might not make that much difference, but sometimes it does. I can't tell you what fish want and how they want it, what color they want. They say match the hatch. I think that works to an extent, but again, I've only been bass fishing 10 years. I'm sure if you're, out there, and there's a bunch of bluegill on beds, which is what we've been fishing, you're going to want to throw a bluegill color if those bass are chasing them.
Yeah.
Or something with a similar profile. So this isn't all the baits. Some of the other baits that I like to throw, basically a shaky head. I always have a shaky head worm tied on, like a finesse worm. It's usually a fat KVD fat baby finesse. I have that tied on year round. A Texas rig lizard, probably one of my go-to baits. The Nico tadpole, which all those fish in this last video that you guys saw,
You need stock in them.
that was one of the only things those fish would hit was the Nico tadpole. And I will tell you, I've probably caught more bass on that bait than anything else.
From what I've seen, I need to get on that bandwagon and get me a couple. It's different to fish though. He was using a ultralight type crappie rod. I didn't have that with me that day, and I was using like a medium heavy spinning rod. And I just had a hard time feeling with it. What was the jig head?
It's like an eighth of it's an eighth ounce jig head.
I felt like I just threw line out and I just had air. So next time we go, I'm gonna take a little crappie rod with me, ultralight, and I'll try to see if I can get
it's an open phase crappie jig with a tadpole on it. I know there's some other companies that are starting to make some of those. Nico to me is the best because like you can catch hundreds of fish on one bait. I mean the baits just you can take them and you can stretch them. The elasticity in them is great. And you buy a bag of 5 or 6 of them and they'll last you 2 or 3 years. And I've done really good on the chick on them. I've done good at Dyson Creek Reservoir on them. All over really. I mean everywhere I fished with them I've done pretty good. And it'll catch crappie, it'll catch perch. It'll catch bluegill, catfish. I mean, I've literally caught just about everything on there that you can think of. So you could put it on your kids' pool and let them play with, smaller fish if that's something you're looking to do. But obviously a wacky worm, which Ryan kind of talked about, which is hard for a lot of people to get into fishing a wacky worm because it is so slow. But I will say it works, man. Wacky worms work. If you watch a lot of the MLF guys, they're constantly throwing a wacky worm, especially around the spawn, a little bit after the spawn, a little bit before the spawn. But what I found is in the dead of summer when it's super hot out, when those pads and those grass are up, to just throw it, you find your lily pad edge or that milfoil edge and let it fall in there. It's supposed to mimic a dying fish, and that's exactly what it looks like. A couple different colors I kind of stick with are there's a bright chartreuse yum dinger. It's a smaller one. It's hard to throw on a bait caster, but Ryan hasn't used that one yet. But if he keeps fishing with me in the summer, he will, because it will catch a lot of fish. But those
Perch,
are
even yellow.
perch, perch. But this is like a translucent one that I use.
Gotcha.
And it's pretty cool. That's on my top 5 spring baits, I think, in one of my previous videos. But watermelon seed, green pumpkin, black and blue, the colors that you throw. I don't go crazy with my color selection because I just found that I found what works and I stick to it. And if I'm rotating through those baits and they don't work, then I might pull out a pink one or something, a red one or earthworm color or methylate. I've had some luck on methylate here before. There's a lot of guys here in the Chick that throw methylate, but they don't. Those, for some reason, that color, the rubber in them doesn't last very long. Like two, 3 hits on that, and it's gone. Yeah. So you're paying a lot for it.
We can do another one too, and talk about plastics. If people want to hear something about it, give us some feedback on this. Let us know what y'all might want to hear too. And,
exactly.
Comment on Chad's channel, and if y'all like this, maybe we'll do it again and go over some other stuff.
Yeah. But if you're, go ahead.
I want to talk about this pop bar. Like this is just eating at me. So a lot of people, mornings and evenings, for a pop bar, and I will tell you, I love the Nottoway River. The levels kind of got to be right. We do mainly kayak fishing, so Chad's never been down there, so I'm anxious to get him there. But last year, me and my grandpa went, and my grandpa's not an early morning person at all, but we went down there, and I will always generally have a pop bar tied on. People always got Texas rig, swim jig tied on, whatever. I'm a pop bar guy, and we went down there last year, and I think we were down there for about 4 to 6 hours, and I caught all my fish on a pop bar. That's all I had in my hand all day long, and it was 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3 in the afternoon. Nothing about that was morning or evening at all, okay? Yeah. And I flat tore them up. I slayed them on the same one. I actually threw Nottoway, a swift river, for those that don't know about it. The water's constantly moving. And I caught one off of a tree. My grandpa had the power pole dragging. Well, by the time I got to fish in the boat and let it go or whatever, the tree was still there. So I was like, I'm going to throw back at the same tree. Threw back at the same exact tree and caught another fish. So I caught 2 fish off same tree on the same exact pop bar. Another prime example, it was middle of July or August, and I went with my buddy and fished a private pond, and we got there about 3 o'clock. Again, I told you, I got that pop bar always in my hand, and he was laughing at me. He said, "What you got that pop bar? That's a morning to evening thing." I said, "No, let me do my thing." About 10 casts later, I caught about a 3.5 pounder. I swear, I didn't have a scale on it, but I swear that fish was 3.5 pounds. And I caught about 4 or 5 more on the same pop bar. It was about 95 degrees that day. We were sitting in a canoe, burning up. I was slaying them. He said, "I can't believe you're catching fish when that pop bar as hard as it is right here at 4 o'clock in the afternoon." I said, "I'm telling you, that pop bar, man." He didn't catch a single fish that day. He was throwing nothing but plastics, and I was tearing them up on top water. Yeah. So I'm telling you, don't be afraid to throw that top water on any time of the day. I obviously wintertime and springtime I don't really know much about, but I'm telling you, dead beat of summer, I have had multiple success with the pop bar, not just morning and evening, but flat smack middle of the day. And I know Nottoway is an exception. For those that don't know, Nottoway does not get pressured a whole lot. Okay, it's takes the right kind of people to go down there as far as a kayak and john boat. You know, you're not going to take your Ranger $70,000 Ranger bass boat to Nottoway River. You're just not going to do it. But the level fluctuates there a lot with rain and coming from the mountains and stuff. But that Poplar is my go-to. The frog last year, I had a few hits on the Chick River, and it's been a while since I've caught a fish on a frog, and I missed every single one on a frog. So I got mad at the frog last year. So I did see somebody talking about the Gambler. I think I told him about the Gambler popping frog. So I might try that.
So the frog is difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And there's tons of videos out there that you can go watch on how to get the best hook set, how to, when to set the hook, not to visually watch it, then set the hook, listen for it, then set the hook. There's all these different things, but the key thing to remember, what I found, because I didn't fish frogs. I fished frogs for a long time, then I stopped because I was like, I'm missing so many fish.
Yeah.
Like it's so frustrating, especially. And I will say most of the fish that I've caught on a frog have been pretty good sized fish. I mean, they're good sized fish usually. Is find you the cheapest, softest frog you can. A lot of people will say, put them in boiling water for 3 to 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever, depending on how firm it is, and it'll soften up your body. And so that's, I think, the key to remember. This is a scum frog. It's probably the best hookup ratio frog that I've ever had. I've thrown all the different brands of frogs, the popping frog, the Spros, the Strike Kings. I mean, you name it, I've thrown that frog.
That's what I've got, the Spros.
Yeah, and the popping ones are nice because it's like throwing a popper. Plus, and now they have some soft body poppers that they make, which I have a couple of those. They're supposed to come through the lily pads really good. When I threw it, I did try it. I didn't care for it. I couldn't pop it the way I wanted. The hard body, to me, that's a popper is more open water, around trees, something that you're not throwing it in heavy cover.
Yeah, no.
You're not going to throw it into a pad, a bunch of lily pads, because you're just going to end up losing it.
Yeah.
Will I do it? Absolutely, I'll do it, because I want to see if I can get one in there. But if you look at the scum frog, the way that it's built, it's got this kind of notched out section in it, and that's what kind of helps with that bite. And then it's got a heavier kind of rear end, as I like to call it. So what that does is it drops that rear down in the water a little bit, which drops the hooks down in the water. And so it's super easy. I mean, you can see it takes zero pressure at all to bite down on this. And I've had a lot of good hookup ratios with those.
Yeah, I like that one. That's definitely significantly different than those spurs. What is it? Spros that I have,
And I also trim the skirts. That's one thing that, I do listen to a lot of people. They say, yep, trim the skirts. I think that helps. Is it going to affect your hookup ratio? I don't know. I really don't know, because
I have no idea.
It's such a fine material that
I can't see that stopping it.
If they can't bite through that, then whatever. But to me, it creates a little bit better of an action, because it's when you're popping it left and popping it right versus a longer tail. To me, the action was a little bit better.
I'll talk about the crankbait, since that's what I would go to.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much y'all watch YouTube, but Mikey Balls out of Florida, absolutely love him. I love that he is completely straightforward. I feel like you got to be a little leery with some of the pros, but anyway, I was on midnight shift and I was watching him, and he was throwing some deep diving crankbaits, and I was like, man, that seems pretty cool. Like, I want to try that. Well, that next morning, my grandpa and I were going fishing, and I have never really thrown a lot of deep diving, like 8-10 feet plus, and so I had one tied up that morning, and it was a chartreuse color at the Chick, and we were fishing, and I just made this long cast right out the back of my grandpa's John boat, and I cranked that thing about 10 times and caught one, and I was like, well, dang, that was fun, 10 minutes later, same crankbait, bam, another one. I was on them that day. That deep diving, it was a chartreuse colored crankbait. Man, I tore them up, and I was like, man, I'm hooked to this now. So I had a lot of success toward the last end of summer, midsummer, into summer with the deep diving crankbait.
And it's an easy bait to throw.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So that was something that I hadn't really done before. I've always kind of thrown like this, some shallow diving, some smaller ones. But yeah, I can't talk about the buzzbait. I'll have to let Chad talk about that one. That's one I don't have much luck on there either.
Yeah, so for the crankbaits for you kayak fishermen, if you're trolling out to a spot, I know a lot of you guys got motors on your kayaks, but we do not have motors on our kayaks.
Our legs.
Not that some of us don't want them.
Yeah.
I don't.
I do.
Ryan does. But basically, when I'm trolling out to where I want to fish, I always have a crankbait tied on behind me because it's just another opportunity to catch a fish.
And I'm gonna have to start doing that. I've never really thought about doing that. And Chad kind of mentioned that.
And sometimes, I have lost a lot of crankbaits doing that because you do hook up a lot of stumps. But if you're kind of out in the middle, if you're kind of watching where you're going, and again, it's another opportunity to see where the fish are located, what they're doing. Are they going to hit something fast? Are they going to hit something slow? Pay attention to my trolling speed if I'm going 2 miles an hour or less than 1.5. And trying to see where I'm going and what I'm going to do. But if you're just getting into bass fishing, a crankbait's a great bait to try out because it literally takes no skill at all. No. There's no finessing it. They're either going to smack it and you're going to get a pretty good hookup ratio with it, or you're not going to catch anything.
It's a great bite. It's fun.
It is.
A
crankbait. A crankbait day of fishing, if they're hitting it, it's just nonstop.
Just like a
real good time. Yeah. So like. Smith Mountain Lake, that's a lot of good clear water. They can see that bait for a long ways away. It's a good place to run over flats. It's a good place I will throw it in structure. I know a lot of people will not.
Yeah,
but
I will. Down trees all day long.
I'll throw it in a down tree.
Absolutely.
And if it gets hung up, it gets hung up. But that's where a lot of those fish, and you got to remember, it's not just that this thing is moving through the water. When you throw it through structure and it knocks and it hits something, those bass will key in on that.
Absolutely.
And even sometimes the bluegill will go investigate it, which if it brings the bluegill, it's probably going to bring in a bass.
Yeah.
So it's always a good bait to throw on. Kind of back to the spinner bait, is kind of like, these two baits right here are like searcher baits for me.
Yeah.
I'm
swim
going
jig too.
Yeah, swim jig and the chatterbait, right? Bladed jig. So those are like your searcher baits. If you're getting hits on those, but you're not getting hookups, or if you're missing fish, or if they're hitting the tails, that's when you pick up that wacky worm and throw it back in there. That's when you pick up that
slow it down.
That Texas rig, craw, or whatever it is, or a shaky head, and throw back in there. But what I usually find is when I start throwing these and the fish start hitting them, I stick with them because I get really good hookup ratios. I didn't throw a spinnerbait for like 8 years, and then my buddy Ron put one on and caught a fish up against a bank in Dyson Creek off the Chick. And ever since then, man, I picked up the spinnerbait again. See, I use single blade Colorado blades. I know a lot of people use the double willows or in conjunction with the Colorado. I don't know how much of it really matters. If there's a ton of bait fish, you probably want that double bladed. But if there's not a lot of bait fish and that's what they're chasing is shad, then a single blade will work fine. I throw them in lily pads. I throw them in grass. I throw them in wood.
They come through everything.
And I throw. This is kind of a big one. This is a quarter. This is a half ounce, I think. I normally throw a quarter ounce one.
Yeah.
And I throw the cheapest one I can find, like $4 or $5, the cheapest one I can find, because the blades aren't really made that well and they're a little bit thinner, and so is all the rest of the material.
Yeah.
Which means, this might be a quarter ounce jig head, but altogether it's a little bit more. So then when I'm throwing those cheaper ones, that drops in the water column even slower.
Yeah.
So then what I'll do is I'll pop it a couple times. I'll even let it go all the way to the bottom.
You told me that.
Yeah.
The thing is
like,
slow reel in the wintertime, I think you told me.
In the wintertime, yeah. There's times where I've gone out there and, I'm kind of burning it. You got to try different things.
Yeah.
Reel it fast, reel it slow. Pop it a couple times, let it stop. And then sometimes you just get lucky. You throw it out and you be talking to somebody and it's sitting on the bottom and you pick it up and you got a fish. You're like, well, that's odd.
Yeah.
And then you do that again, you replicate it and you're like, okay, this is what they want.
Yeah.
So again, going back to listening to what the fish want is really key.
I've also seen that with that chatterbait too. Let that chatterbait fall all the way to the bottom and then start cranking that thing back in, and that blade just does that number all the way up, and they'll catch it on the rise or it'll fall down.
I can't speak to the chatterbait because I've only caught one fish on it in 8 years.
Yeah.
But again, I don't throw them.
Yeah. I've done pretty good with them. I've caught fish here and there. I'm not gonna say I've slayed them on a chatterbait like I've had the popar or crankbaits before. But I do catch fish on them, and I do love it. I just love feeling that vibration, and then you don't feel it, and you know you've got one. Just lean into that sucker, and she's there.
I think if I was fishing like the Nottoway more,
Yeah.
you know, I'm gonna want to be throwing something like this because the water's gonna be moving a lot faster. So to me, this kind of makes sense. Any type of fast moving water like the Upper James or something, I think a chatterbait would work good. You know, anything going across. You know, we didn't really mention, you got whopper ploppers, you got walking baits, spooks, which
I haven't. I've got 3 or 4, and I haven't caught a fish on one.
I've caught a lot of fish on a spook, but I don't.
want to.
I don't throw it a lot because I hate that action. I hate walking the dog.
Yeah,
it's just not something. I don't mind doing it with a small popper, but most of the spooks, big size spooks, are pretty big. You have to have a pretty good action rod. Over 7 foot, and that they can get tiring or annoying over a long time, and it's hard out of a kayak too.
Yeah.
Unless you stand up, and obviously I don't stand a lot right now. I more limp around, but those are the baits.
You can go ahead.
No,
I'll talk about the swim jig for a minute.
Okay.
So, the swim jig, Greg Hackney, y'all can check him out too. Obviously, he's the pro here, but I've watched a lot of his stuff on the swim jig. And speaking of what Chad was talking about finding and searching the fish, Hackney really talked about he'll always have a white, black, and blue green pumpkin on the deck of the boat. And he'll throw one of them. If he's not catching it, he'll throw them and just kind of search. As soon as he catches a fish on one, he slows back, scales back, and he'll come in and pitch or flip a Texas crawl or whatever that may be, or even a wacky. And so I like I said, Chad had good luck on them, and I had one on at Smith Mountain Lake on a 3/16 ounce, and that seems to be what they seem to kind of like up here right now this time of the year. Anyway, he hasn't fished them in late summer, and I haven't either yet. So we'll see. Maybe when they get deeper, we might need to up it to that quarter or 3/8 ounce to get a little bit lower in the water column, but. In the beginning of May, I had that one on at Smith, and I was really disappointed I lost that because I was stoked again to be trying something new and actually catch a fish on it. But check out what he's gotten some, and I need to get some more. But what's that Z-Man, the Midwest Finesse?
Yeah.
They seem to be the only really ones that carry that 3/16 ounce.
Yeah.
I haven't really seen them in stores around here, and I had my guy at work I would talk about to you sometimes. He says he has a hard time finding the 3/16 ounce swim jigs. He can't find them.
Tackle Warehouse is the only place I think I found them.
So
if you go to Amazon, you might be able to find them, but really, it's the Z-Man.
Midwest Finesse is what it is.
There are some other off-brand ones. I'm sure you can find somewhere, some local guys.
They were a good price point. The Z-Man Midwest, I think $3.99, $4.99 or something for that. So, and they do have them up. I think it's 3/16.
Quarter ounce.
I thought it was a quarter and then maybe 5/16.
Yeah, 5/16.
They had 3 sizes, but they didn't have a 3/8. Was it? I can't remember.
I don't know.
Anyway, check them out. But that's kind of the swim jigs we're kind of using. Is that a 6 cents one there? You said.
This is a 6 cents one. Yeah. It's a quarter ounce. It's a little bit heavy for the way that I was fishing the other day.
Yeah.
But I think the great thing about swim jigs that I never really realized was kind of how versatile you can fish them.
Yeah, it comes through everything. I couldn't believe that.
Yeah,
either, man.
I was pretty shocked. I mean, we're throwing it in Dyson Creek, and the water's super, super high, which means there's tons of stuff in the water. And I think I got hung up a couple times, but I didn't lose anything. Yeah. I lost them due to bowfin or gar or something else, maybe a turtle. But what I really liked about this one is I could fish this the same way I could fish a chatterbait or a spinnerbait.
Yeah.
I can sit there and I could, slow reel, or I could pop it and kind of keep it fluttering in the water column, or I could drop it and I could actually hop it and swim. So there's tons of different ways you can fish it. I did fish a swim jig on the Chickahominy a couple weeks ago when the water was still in the 60s. And had a couple bites on it. I really didn't know what I was doing at the time.
You lost that one. Right?
I lost a pretty good one. He had taken off before I even knew I had a fish because I had just picked up the jig and threw it a couple times and didn't expect to get a bite. But the more that I have it in my hand, the more I seem to get bit. So don't get set in your ways like me and try new things.
Yeah, and that's the same for me. I am always a crankbait guy, and meeting Chad, and he's like plastic, plastic, plastic. And this year,
Yeah.
I told myself, so you know what? I'm gonna put a Texas rig in my hand, and that's what I'm gonna leave in my hand. And I asked him, I was like, "Hey, what are some colors?" He
Yeah.
said black and blue and green pumpkin for our area around here. I was like, "All right," so I got some of those colors, and darn sure enough, like I said, that Zoom Speed Crawl
Yeah.
3.5 inch last week. Now I had just put that on. I hadn't made many casts because I was fishing that big Swamp Water Blue for a while. That
Yeah.
was like a 4 inch.
Yeah.
And I put that 3.5 green pumpkin on, and it might have been an hour later, and I caught that one fish. Shortly
Yeah.
after that, we went home.
And it
but-
didn't even really look like a good profile. Like the hook,
No.
the hook was oversized.
Yeah,
The weight
yeah.
was big.
Yeah, I had just told him. If you watch my video, I just told Chad. I was like, I think
Yeah.
the hook's too big for this
Yeah.
thing, and bam, the next cast caught him.
Yeah.
And so if you want to try something new, that's what I have made myself do, and that's different for Ryan. Ryan is usually not that guy. I put something in my hand this year, and I don't think I've thrown a crankbait at all this year. I think I did it Dice Gun
Yeah.
the other day because you told me
Yeah.
I was hitting on that.
Yeah.
And so I threw one the other day, but since then I've been
Yeah.
Wacky, Texas rig, Smith Mountain Lake. I was doing the Carolina rig. I've done the swim jig. I've kind of gone off my beaten path and tried
And
something
you
new
caught
this
one on the
year.
Carolina rig,
Yeah,
right?
I caught one as soon as I had gotten there.
So that
was on his lizard he was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lizard that I
Yep.
actually made too.
Yep. Yeah, it was 100%.
So, again, there's, you kind of got to react to what the fish are doing. You got to try new things.
Yeah.
Don't get pigeonholed. There's a billion baits out there with a billion different colors and a billion different scenarios. Now, when I'm out there and I'm kayak fishing, how I approach it is I stick with what I think the fish are going to want based on the time of the year. But that doesn't always hold true.
No.
I mean, with the way the weather is this year and the water temperature being up and down and up and down and all over the place, I think we completely missed the spawn.
I don't even know when it was.
I don't even know when it was. I never saw a fish on bed.
We fished
Yeah.
March and April,
Yeah.
and I don't even
Yeah.
have a clue, man.
You probably missed the spawn at Smith Mountain Lake
Yeah.
by 2 weeks.
Yep.
The MLF guys on the heavy hitters missed it by
That
a
was
week.
post spawn by the time
They
we
were
got there.
post spawn. So it's hard to kind of get dialed in sometimes. So stick with what you have confidence in.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it is just a confidence thing because you know how to work it.
Yeah.
You have confidence in the bait. And then once you kind of go through your selection, then you start thinking outside of the box. Well, I haven't tried this and I haven't tried it fishing this way. Or sometimes it's just that time of the day too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's times, especially on tidal rivers. Good luck to you.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say. It took me and Ron a long time to figure out how to fish tidal stuff, but
I think it's just a hit or miss too.
It is.
On it. I mean, if you've only got a day off to go fishing, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if the tide's already
Yeah.
out when you get there. Not it's all you're able to do. You know.
or if it's a super high tide or a
yeah.
super low tide.
Absolutely.
But just try different baits, try different things, and go out there and have an arsenal. I mean, I try to keep a couple different colors of each bait that I have confidence in. But typically, like Ryan is saying, I don't go with all these 50 different color combinations of things. A green pumpkin with a dipped chartreuse,
Tail.
garlic tail is gonna attract 90% of your fish.
Yeah.
Whether it's a shaky head or a wacky worm or a craw, green pumpkin, because everything in the water looks green pumpkin.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you got days where it's super bright out,
Yeah.
and you got days where it's cloudy out, and you got days where you have chocolate soup for water.
Ain't no lie.
So you have to adapt to that. If you can't see it in the water column, the fish probably aren't going to see it either.
Yeah, unless you hit them in the head.
No, but
Yeah, and that swim jig, speaking, I watched a lot of Greg Hackney talk about it before I kind of bought some. He throws it on a 7.6. And
Yeah.
I had told Chad that
Yeah.
that's a long rod, man,
It's too
because
big.
he likes to do that popping,
Yeah.
12 o'clock to center of the hands on the clock, And I've been throwing it on a 7.3, and I'm like, man, this is almost like too much for a 7.3. But again, we're in kayaks. He's
I throw it on a
bass boat.
610.
Yeah, so he's a 6'10". So,
Yeah.
and how do you like that? Do you feel? What have you been doing? Popping
I
left
think
or right?
I think on the smaller jigs it's fine, and I keep my rod tip almost straight up and
Okay.
down.
Got you.
On these big ones though, on the 610, I say big, a quarter ounce on a 610. It's hard to throw because it's a lot of weight at the end of that fast action tip.
Gotcha.
So you probably nuding to 7.3
Yeah.
to kind of keep it up there and have that action that you want. But if you're just going to be casting it and kind of burning it, you can throw it on anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people fish the swim jig that way. I've
Yeah.
seen they just reel it on in, you know.
So there's lots of baits that we haven't talked about.
Yeah, jerk baits. I've never even caught fish on a jerk bait.
Jerk baits, swim baits.
Yeah. And we can cover those another time.
Minnow heads, which are the talk of the town with live scope right now. Which
neither one of us have.
I had live scope on the boat at one point for some kids for their tournaments, but I'm not a live scope guy. Has it changed the sport of bass fishing? I think it has. Has it ruined it? No, I don't think it has.
No.
Has it changed it? Yeah. Again, I think it has.
To each their own.
Yeah, I'm not hating on somebody that goes out there and catches them on live scope, because some days I'm like, man, I wish I had live scope. Because it can get tough. But it just depends what you're trying to do. If you're a tournament fisherman and that's how you're going to make your money,
Absolutely.
and you're spending a lot of money, then I'd probably have every single thing I could in my arsenal that I could. But let us know what other baits you want us to kind of talk about, go over. We'll probably do a couple series on different ways to rig plastics. We'll go over the Texas rig, the Neko rig, Wacky rig, Carolina rig.
Yeah, we can do some plastics.
Shaky head. I mean, we can do a whole series on plastics. We can do a whole series just on different spin baits, different crankbaits, different swim jigs, obviously.
Some rod and reels, maybe.
Yeah, just do. Yeah, I mean, whatever you guys want us to look at and talk about, let us know. So I think that's all we got for today.
I'm good.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit the like button. If you hit the dislike button, that's fine too. But you can hit the like button if you want. Thanks, guys. Bye.